the way I have designed my talk is that for the first 12 to 15 minutes, I will do my speaking bit. And after that, I'll open the floor for question and answers. And what you will learn within these 12 to 15 minutes is essentially three things: what success is, what the main barriers to success are, and a sort of a framework of how to address these barriers and how to tackle them. So as Aisha said, my name is Dr. Arshia Qasim. By training, I'm a neurologist, and I did my medicine from Allama Iqbal Medical College in Lahore. And after that, I was fortunate enough to complete my license exams and go to England for my postgraduate training. I trained in internal medicine and neurology. I completed my membership exams for the Royal College of Physicians, which is the one of the most coveted postgraduate qualifications that a doctor can have. And I was also very fortunate to be selected for a master's program in clinical neurology at University College London, which I was one of the 11 participants who was selected for that coveted program, alhamdulillah. And intertwined with this part of my career has been my husband's career, who's an oncologist and who works in drug development clinical research for pharmaceutical companies. And his job has required him to take on various international positions in different parts of the world, which has given me the opportunity of relocating to many different countries with him. And I've had the fortune to live in Malaysia, in Singapore, in New Jersey, in Indiana, where I was the assistant professor at Indiana University, Purdue University, in physical medicine and rehab. And currently I'm based in Tokyo. So that's sort of the gist of my career and extra career pathway that has happened over the last 20 years. In addition to this, I think what drives me and what has been a main source of recognition, and I suspect the reason that Aisha has asked me to come and speak about this, is that I have been an activist on certain areas, including the inclusivity of special needs people into the mainstream. I have tried to raise awareness about disabilities, and in particular about a certain disability called aphasia, which I will talk about later. And I've had the opportunity of exploring realms that are, other than mainstream medicine, but which have a therapeutic and an empowering effect on the human psyche. These include practices in art, in literature, and in motivational speaking. So this is the title of my talk: Overcoming Psychosocial Barriers to Success. And as I mentioned a little while ago, that the aim of this is just to give you a framework of what success is, what the barriers are that you can face, especially given the Pakistani society, and how to overcome them. Now, during the course of my career, I've sort of moonlighted as an entrepreneurial advisor, and recently I was working with a company making an employee development program for them, which was completely different from anything I'd ever done before. So when you're a clinician and you deal with doctors, you have a certain set of skills. You interact with people with a certain set of skills that it sets the tone for how you view work ethics and success. But to then extrapolate those skills into a set of people who have not thought about education or career development or personal development in the same way that the educated people have the opportunity to, was quite eye-opening. So in this firm, most of the people that I dealt with were barely they had completed their high school education and they were business associates in a firm, and they wanted to excel in their career. Many of them were primary bread earners for their families. So from low socioeconomic classes, with the financial constraints on them, with not with not enough educational refinement to understand the finer concept of what personal development is. So it was, I think, one of the most challenging things that I've done, but also one of the most rewarding, because I really literally had to break down the process of success and of development to the very, very basic. So I'm going to be using bilingual, so I'll switch between Urdu and English, if that's all right. Is that all right, Aisha?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. The people over here, even the ones who are joining from abroad, they are able to understand.
Connection नहीं आए तो device तेजा मेरे सोफे पे रख लेते हैं. अब वो कह रहे हैं तो फिर
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who has interruptions happening. All right, so with this group of people, the overriding problem that I encountered was, मैं सबसे पूछती थी कि आप क्या करना चाहते हैं, आपका मकसद क्या है? तो सब लोग अक्सर का जवाब ही होता था, मैं कुछ करके दिखाना चाहता हूँ, मैं कुछ बन के दिखाना चाहता हूँ. लेकिन जब मैं उनसे पूछती थी कि आप क्या बन के दिखाना चाहते हैं, तो इसका जवाब किसी को नहीं आता था. इसका जवाब ढूंढने में हमें 6-7 महीने लगे ईच इंडिविजुअल के लिए. सो आई थिंक द फर्स्ट barrier, which is a psychological barrier as well as a social barrier, as well as any kind of barrier from yourself, from your life. So define what success means to you. And the scale can be very varied. So if you see somebody who has, who is financially stable and who is educated and who, who has everything going, from a materialistic point of view, going well for them, maybe success for them means what they can do in order to, serve a bigger purpose, like make a philanthropic move that will help hundreds and millions of people, like Bill Gates, for example. But then on the other hand, for somebody who is struggling to make ends meet, success would be to have the means of finding an employment or sustainability, that can take you from day 1 to day 2. So you see, the scale of success is very different between these two extremes, and you cannot compare either of them, and you cannot apply the same rules on either of them. So I feel what I've learned in my journey and in my expedition is that success is not coming to an end point. That is part of success. But success is the distance that you've come from where you started. And if you started from a very low distance, from deep down, and you've barely managed to scrape the surface, it is a huge success from your point of view. So the first thing that you need to have in your mind is a clear idea of what it is that you want. Now, there was this person that I met in, I also established an art center in Bernardsville in New Jersey. It's part of one of the many projects that I've undertaken, and it was an entrepreneurial moonlighting project that I did. And in that art center, I had the opportunity of meeting many eccentric, interesting people who had led a life that was very different from what I would consider normal. And this person, I remember, and I'll only quote the learning points that I had from him. He said, the universe is willing and ready to give you what you want, provided you ask it specifically. So if you're not specific enough about what you want, you'll never get there. So the main take-home message from all of this is that know what you need. Define your your goal. I would like to go to the next slide if possible. Right. So this is just a point of pondering for you. What is success? As I said, it is different for everybody, and it is not always what is visible to you. And some things may seem successful on the surface, but they're not, and vice versa. Can you please go to the next slide, Aisha? Now, living in Japan has given me the opportunity of exploring several concepts that are unique to this culture and that are, contributory to the reason why the Japanese culture and philosophy is so amazing and so unique in the whole world. So there's this concept called the ikigai. Ikigai, according to the Japanese, is the reason why you're alive, the thing that keeps you alive and meaningful. And it is very different from what the Western concept of success or passion is. This is a westernized explanation of ikigai, but if you speak to a Japanese person, it is such an ingrained concept in them. Just like हमारे माशरे में जिस तरह मुसलमानों में ईमान और तहारत और पाकीज़गी इस किस्म के कुछ कॉन्सेप्ट्स होते हैं जो कि आप ट्रांसलेट कर दें तो उसकी जो डेप्थ है वो ख़त्म हो जाती है. इसी तरह इकिगाई, this is a good Venn diagram to try and understand it, but जो इसकी असल हकीकत है वो आप समझ लें हमारी ज़बान में तकवा के करीब तरीन इसको कहा जा सकता है. क्या ऐसी चीज़ है जो कि आपकी एग्जिस्टेंस का मकसद बनती है और आप अपनी पूरी जिंदगी उस काम के परसूट में गुजार सकते हैं या गुजारना चाहते हैं या गुजारना चाहिए आपको. तो ikigai is the perfect combination of something that you love, that you're good at, and it has a need in the world, and ideally you can be paid for it, because you cannot do what you love and what you're good at without taking into consideration your human needs of sustenance and of making a living and of earning enough to be able to look beyond the strife of bread and butter. So this is ikigai. I think you can spend a good 10 minutes on this diagram, and it's very self-explanatory. What is passion? What is a mission? So if there's something that you love and it is something that the world needs, it can become your mission. But is it your ikigai? You have to somehow make it your vocation and try and make it something that you can sustain your livelihood on as well. If you just pursue something that you love and you're good at, but you don't get any reward in the sense that it is not something that is making a difference in anybody else's world, then you will probably not get the satisfaction of being useful. And I think that is a huge driving factor for many. There's another author which I would recommend you to read, to listen to on YouTube, to understand these concepts. He's Simon Sinek. I think he's his teachings are very good in terms of self-empowerment and leadership. And he always starts with this question that you have to find your why. Why? Start with why. If you're doing something, ask yourself, why are you doing it? Why is this important to you? And if you can satisfactorily answer why, then it puts everything else in place. For example, the reason I am agreeing to do this this talk, my reason for why are twofold. One, I feel that inspiring others is a source of receiving inspiration in turn, and I would be lost if I lived a life where there was not a two-way inspiration happening. Inspiration is like a hug I feel You can't give it without receiving it in return. And inspiring young minds that are ready to learn and ripe with ideas and fertile enough to, allow those ideas to grow into fruit-bearing trees is the most meaningful thing that I feel I can do with my life. So that's my why, one. The second why is that it gives me the chance of speaking about things that are meaningful to me. For example, I will tell you the story that brought about this transformation in my life later on. And without this platform, I would not have had that opportunity. So that's my why. Can we go on to the next slide, please, Aisha? So when you spend some time after this lecture, give this question a few minutes, maybe more than a few minutes, some thought of what is your ikigai. And maybe your ikigai changes as you evolve in your understanding and in your pursuit. Maybe if you write today what your ikigai is and you revisit it 10 years later, it may be a little different. But it's a good place to start. So start now. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Right. So once you've identified what your ikigai is, and you know the direction that you're going in, then comes the question of how to get there. So I'm sure many of you have read or seen the movie or cartoons of Alice in Wonderland. All these children's books they're treasure troves of wisdom if we read them with the intention of finding treasures from them. So there's this point in Alice in Wonderland. Alice asks the Cheshire Cat at a fork in the road, and she asks, which road should I take? And the cat asks Alice, where do you want to get to? And Alice says, well, I don't know. And the cat says, well, then it doesn't matter. So you can see this example in a multitude of ways. It's quite amazing. And if you're still trying to figure out where you want to go, that's fine. You can take the scenic route to maybe finding out where you need to go is the destination for now. So you can take the scenic route getting there. Don't rush yourself. But it is important to keep taking stock of where you are, where you've come from, and where you're headed in order to have a meaningful a journey that can chart your growth. You will grow regardless. But if you have a chart or a documentation of how you have grown, it makes your growth more more viable. It makes it more sustainable, and it helps you in your future goals as well. So this you can easily see that it says SMART. So what is SMART? SMART is a way of making your goals, right? If you want to get somewhere, you need to have, for example, a specific goal. That is the first thing. You need to have a specific goal. As I said before, success, you won't know you've succeeded unless you know what it is that you want. So be specific about it. ये जो जिस तरह उन लोगों ने मुझे कहा था, मैं कुछ करना चाहता हूँ, मैं कुछ बनना चाहता हूँ, क्या बनना चाहता हूँ, मुर्गा बनना चाहता हूँ, इंसान बनना चाहता हूँ, तो ये specific enough नहीं है. To have a specific goal is the step one of any undertaking that you can do, and essentially determines whether or not you're going to be successful or not. As physicians, especially as neuro-rehabilitation physicians, which is what I am, we deal with people who have neurological conditions and who require a certain time with therapists and doctors to be able to retain a level of functionality to go back into their lives. This is what I do as a vocation. We use the SMART goals to ascertain their progress. For example, जिस तरह लोग होते हैं जिनको stroke हो जाता है और उनकी एक साइड पैरालाइज हो जाती है। अब स्ट्रोक के कुछ अरसे के बाद हो सकता है उनका सबसे पहला गोल ये हो कि उन्होंने उठ के बैठना है, कि वो बेड रिडन है और उन्होंने उठ के बैठना है, ये एक गोल हो सकता है। तो वो जब तक उसको स्पेसिफाई नहीं करेंगे कि आपने इस गोल के लिए काम करना है, जो इसका इस रोड का एंड है ना, कि उन्होंने वापस जिंदगी में जाके चलना फिरना है और अपने काम को दोबारा उसी तरह करना शुरू करना है जैसे वो स्ट्रोक होने से पहले करते थे, वो बहुत दूर लगेगा, वहां तक हो सकता है वो पहुंच ना पाए, या डर जाएं, या ये रास्ता उन्हें इतना मुश्किल लगे कि उस पर वो कदम ना रख सकें। इसलिए इस रास्ते को छोटे छोटे गोल्स में डिवाइड करना ये बहुत जरूरी है। और हर गोल, हर स्टेप जो है वो आपका स्मार्ट स्टेप होना चाहिए। अब स्मार्ट क्या है? इट शुड बी स्पेसिफिक, यानी आपने ये डिसाइड किया कि उसने उठ के बैठना है। इट शुड बी मेजरेबल, यानी आपके पास कोई एक ऐसी असेसमेंट का तरीका हो जिससे आप ये बता सकें कि पहले वो ये नहीं करता था और अब वो ये कर रहा है। जब मेजरेबल नहीं होगा तो आपको पता कैसे लगेगा कि ये अचीव हो गया या नहीं? ठीक है, इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। सो इफ यू डोंट रिमेंबर एनीथिंग फ्रॉम दिस लेक्चर but you remember the smart goals, I think you would have a framework for your life. So the goal should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be attainable. ये एक ऐसी चीज है जो मैं अपने बेटे को भी अक्सर कहती रहती हूँ कि आपने सीढ़ी के पहले रंग पे कदम रखने की आपकी अगर कैपेसिटी है, लेकिन आप सोच रहे हो कि आपने अपनी टांग उठा के आखिरी रंग पे रखनी है, तो वो पॉसिबल नहीं है. It's not attainable at this stage. You have to take one step at a time. You have to trust the process and you have to do as it is presented to you, because your skill level will increase as you ascend the pathway. So whatever you decide to do, whatever your goal is, it has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be attainable right now in your present situation. अगर ये अटेनेबल गोल नहीं है तो फिर आप डे ड्रीम कर रहे हैं, फिर वो गोल नहीं है. इट्स जस्ट अ डे ड्रीम. टू कन्वर्ट अ डे ड्रीम इनटू अ गोल, you have to make it achievable, right? You have to break it down in a way that it comes within your reach, and everything is within your reach if you're smart enough, if you know how to implement your skills in a way that is smart enough. So it should be attainable. Second, the next step is that it should be relevant. It should be relevant. Or you should have something in your mind to make it relevant. अगर आपका गोल ये है कि आपने फॉर एग्जाम्पल बॉडी बिल्डिंग करनी है और आपने 1 महीने के एंड में 100 किलो का वजन उठाना है, इसमें आप स्पेसिफिक हैं कि आपने 100 किलो का वजन उठाना है, मेजरेबल है कि अभी आप 10 किलो उठा सकते हैं और 1 महीने के बाद आप 100 किलो उठाने लगेंगे. अटेनेबल, अगर आप रोजाना इसके पर काम करेंगे तो इट इज अटेनेबल. रेलेवेंट, यानी वजन उठाने की प्रैक्टिस करने में अगर आप कोई ऐसा काम करते हैं जिसका इससे कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है, तो ये इस गोल में आपकी मदद शायद ना कर सके. ठीक है, तो इट हैज टू बी रेलेवेंट टू व्हाट यू आर ट्राइंग टू डू. एंड द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज दैट इट हैज टू बी टाइम बाउंड. जो गोल जिसके लिए आप एक टाइम मुकर्रर नहीं करते, वो गोल नहीं बनता, वो फिर डे ड्रीम के उसमें आ जाता है, क्योंकि अकाउंटेबिलिटी खत्म हो जाती है. इफ यू गिव योरसेल्फ टाइम बाउंड goals and you keep ticking them off your list, that is how you know that you've taken the step and you're ready for the next one, and you're ready for the next one. So once you've determined what you want to do, once you've determined that, the next step is to break it down into smart goals and revisit them again and again. एक गोल खत्म करने के बाद दोबारा अपनी ऐसा take stock of what you have right now and then determine where you're going next. Then take stock, then determine where you're going next. All right? So abhi tak, how are we doing right now? Abhi tak theek ja rahe hain sab? Still awake? Still with me? Okay, I have no idea what the reaction is, so I'm just going to assume that everybody is with me. So
yes, Arshia, alhamdulillah, we are able to hear you and you're doing fine. We've just asked
okay,
people to keep their mics on mute before the question answer session. So
I think that's
that's
a
the only
great
reason, that's why they're quiet.
that's a great idea, and I'm seeing that the comments are dropping in the chat box, which is great because that's a good way of knowing that
Okay.
if the people are getting me. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much for everybody who has given their feedback. Now, there are a few principles that I feel are very important for me. And I think, we can argue at length about the philosophical aspects of these. And some people will say the opposite is also true. That's fine. That's fine. But these are a few principles that I feel have played a huge role in my life. The innocence of these principles has saved me from a lot of cynical thinking, and I think that is one important aspect of living life to its full, accepting everything that it presents to you. And I would like to share this with you. The first and foremost is the law of practice. Now, this is the utmost, the simplest principle that I have a firm belief in. Whatever you practice, you get good at. इसकी मिसाल मैं आपको ऐसे देती हूँ कि अगर आप पहली दफा किसी जंगल में से गुजरें तो आप ढेर सारे दरख्त होंगे, कांटे होंगे, रास्ता आपको मुश्किल से मिल रहा होगा, आपको चीजें हटानी पड़ेंगी अपने रास्ते से, वहां पर पांव जमाने के लिए अपना मुश्किल करनी पड़ेगी, कुछ ना कुछ बड़ी मुश्किल से आप वहां से गुजर जाएंगे. जब आप अगली दफा गुजरेंगे तो कदरे आसान होगा वहां से गुजरना. तीसरी, चौथी, पांचवी, छठी दफा तक वो एक पाथ बन गया होगा. एग्जैक्टली यही चीज आपके दिमाग में भी हो रही है. जो आपके न्यूरॉन्स है ना, वो भी एक खास तरह के पैटर्न में सोचना, एक्टिव होना, ये पोटेंशियल रखते हैं. तो हम में से बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जो मिसाल के तौर पे पेसिमिज्म प्रैक्टिस करते हैं, and they get so good at it. They get absolutely wonderful. They're the best pessimists because they've done it so many times. You give them any positive situation and they'll find the negative from that situation because they're amazing at it. So you can use this law to your benefit. You can turn it around, and instead of practicing pessimism and negativity and all those deterrent emotions and feelings and situations, you can do them in something that will be favorable to you and something that will help you grow. There's a very simple thing that I've been doing for, let's see, I started in 2013, and it is something that I learned from my mother, and it's been 7 years that I'm practicing this. So whenever I try to post anything on Facebook or any of the social media, I try and do a thankfulness note before I post anything. It's just become like a ritual कि मैं Facebook पे कुछ भी post करने से पहले किसी एक चीज का अल्लाह ताला से, क्रिएटर से शुक्रिया अदा कर देती हूँ. शुरू ये इस तरह हुआ था कि मैं किसी और को ये सिखाने की कोशिश कर रही थी कि ग्रैटिट्यूड जो है वो एक प्रैक्टिस है. It's just like handwriting or tennis or really anything. The more you do, the better you get at it. And there was a debate going on and it didn't really register, and obviously there's this loophole that when you start practicing gratitude, you always only pay gratitude for the things that you normally take for granted. For example, your health and the place that you live in and your family, and that's it. And then you don't go beyond that. But if you seriously use the law of practice to practice gratitude, you start finding things to be grateful for in absolutely everything that you do. And if you put a restriction on yourself that you're not going to say thanks for the same thing that you said thanks yesterday, but try and find a new thing, you'll be amazed. So it's been 7 years, and I've, alhamdulillah, every time I try to find something to be thankful for, I do find something new to be thankful for. And it is life-changing because you get so good at finding goodness in everything that you realize that everything works in your favor if you if you choose for it to do so. So law of practice. So whatever you want to do in your life, just determine how you can use the law of practice to be your friend. If you want to excel at something, you will have to give it the due time. There's this quotation which I probably included somewhere in this presentation later on, that the amount of times that a master has failed is much more than the beginner has even tried. To get so good that you become a master of something, you really have to give it the due practice, the due effort, the due work that it requires. For example, there was a time that I was very interested in, I became very interested in doing calligraphy, and my father always has been doing calligraphy, so I thought I should. And I'm not joking about this, it would take me an average of 50 pages. So I would do 50 rough tries in order to get one that I thought was worthy enough to be shared with others. And all those 50 would just be, they would be lying in my cupboard, and I would sometimes tear them up, or they'd just lose their life or become scrap paper for my subsequent practices. But that is literally the amount of work that goes into producing something that is worthy of preservation. So never underestimate the law of practice and the value of it. And 10 years from now, when you are in our places and when you are giving a similar lecture to younger kids, you will arrive at the same conclusions. And we have done that. And we're trying to make it easy for you, but many of you will still have to go through the process of learning it through failure, which brings me to the next point, that don't be afraid of failure. Failure is actually your friend. I have never learned anything from being at the top of my game as much as I've learned from being at the bottom. Because when you're at the top of the game, the spotlight blinds you to what reality is. And it's very nice and it's beautiful and you like the applause and you like all that, but it doesn't help you grow. It's only when you're left down in the dumps all by yourself, completely devoid of any shred of self-esteem, that is where you find your true self and the courage to begin again, and the humility to know that it's so much greater than you are. This life, this journey, eventually this is a journey that is taking you to your true self, which is the divine manifestation. This is what I believe. And failure is a way of getting you closer, one step at a time. Similarly, the third point is very similar to the second point. I'll say one more thing about failure is your friend. Learn to fail fast. Failure is going to be there. So just get over it quickly and move on. But if you just dwell in failure and, make it such a friend that you don't want to leave it, that's where you'll stay. Whatever you settle for is what you end up with. So don't settle for it. Fail fast and move on. The third thing is that adversity is opportunity. And I cannot stress enough, and as many motivational lectures that you'll listen to, you'll find this commonly recurring theme. Adversity is actually an opportunity.